Justine Villanueva is an author, publisher, and lawyer. She writes fiction, nonfiction, and children's stories, particularly regarding the experiences of Filipinos in the United States. She often uses Filipino folklore, indigenous worldview, and relationships with the land as foundations for her storytelling. She's the founder of Silwaga River Press, a nonprofit which has published 5 books, right on, including the award-winning Jack and Agu, and her latest picture book, Mungad and Lola. Running Silwaga River Press is her form of prayer for our collective healing and liberation. You can find Justine on Instagram at The Panay Publisher or online at justinevillanueva.com or silwagariverpress.com. Thank you. Next we have May Respicio. May Respicio writes novels full of hope and heart. Her book, The House That Lou Built, received the Asian Pacific American Library Association Honor Award in Children's Literature and was an NPR Best Book of the Year. Her titles include the acclaimed Any Day With You and How to Win a Slime War, which have received storied reviews from Kirkus and School Library Journal and have appeared on numerous state reading lists and best books lists. Her most recent work is a middle grade novel in verse, Isabella in Bloom, set in 1999, about a girl who bridges her 2 homes with the discovery of a special community garden. Find her online at Instagram at Respicio Books or at mayrespicio.com. Next we have Rachell Abalos. Rachell Abalos is a Filipino-American kidlit writer who specializes in contemporary and magical stories about her culture. Born in the United States, she spent her childhood in the Philippines, learning how to speak 3 different Filipino languages. She has a BA in literature and writing and is a former Write Mentor PB mentee, and it is her honor to pay it forward and mentor a PB writer. She enjoys reading about new cultures, folklore, STEM, and cute monsters. Yes. Our Nipa Hut is her debut picture book. It's published by Barefoot Books. Find her on IG at Rachell Abalos or at rachellabalos.com. And next we have Lynnor Bontigao, our illustrator on the panel. Lynnor Bontigao is a Manila-born children's book illustrator and author. She has illustrated 7 books, including the award-winning Jack and Agu by Justine Villanueva, which was the winner of the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Gold Award, and Kailani's Gift by Dorina Lazo Gilmore Young. Her 2023 author-illustrator debut, Sari Sari Summers, is a nostalgic love letter to the Philippines and grandmothers, and contains a recipe for mango ice candy. Yes. She loves stories where family, relationships, culture, and food are intertwined, and now lives in New Jersey. You can find her on Instagram at Bontigao or LynnorBontigao.com. And next we have Stephanie Ellen Tsai. Stephanie Ellen C. Stephanie Ellen C. is a Filipino Chinese-Canadian writer and interior designer from Hong Kong. She holds a degree in international relations and Asian studies from Tufts University. Growing up as a third culture kid, she navigated multiple languages and traditions across Hong Kong, Canada, the US, Italy, and the Philippines. And this multiculturalism deeply influences her writing. Stephanie creates picture books that explore the spaces between her cultures and personal experiences, offering children stories that serve as doors, windows, and mirrors. Her debut picture book, A Roof, received a starred review from Kirkus. You can find Stephanie on IG at Steph_C or at StephanieLNC.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you. Welcome.
And I'm Christina Newhard, and I'm a publisher. I'm the founder of Sari Sari Storybooks, and I publish multilingual Filipino books. And you can find me online at Sari Sari Storybooks on Instagram or SariSariStorybooks.com. So welcome to everyone. And I guess to open up, we'll start with, how did you land on your story idea? A very general question. How long did it take you from the time that you thought of it to it actually being in your hands? And whatever you would like to share, and whoever would like to jump into that.
So I can go first. I had a visual idea first, and I had to illustrate it of a girl sitting in front of a sari-sari store looking so bored because I felt that I was that little kid in front of my Lola's sari-sari store and it was no one or just waiting for customers to come. So that's where the idea came from. It was an illustration that I did and I posted it on Instagram and I said there's a story that belongs to this illustration. That idea, I sent it to my agent and we worked on it for about 4-5 months and she subbed it out to the editors that she knows and we got a deal with Candlewick. Probably took about 6 to 8 months to illustrate and do the editing with the editor at the publisher and it took about more than 1.5 years, I guess, for it to be out in bookstores. Maybe it came out 2023. We got the book deal in 2021. Yeah.
And when did you make the sketch, like the idea?
The sketch what I did was 2018. So it really took a little bit more just
5 years.
self-reflection and how it was gonna be. And it took really like two years, from start to finish, 3 years more.
Once it was in the queue.
Yeah.
I can go next.
So my story was actually inspired by Typhoon Ray, which was a super typhoon that occurred over Christmas in 2021. So I remember writing the story clearly. I had gotten my COVID booster shot January 1st, 2022, and it knocked me out. And I was in bed just looking at all the headlines on the news, and it was about Typhoon Ray. And I saw all this destruction, and I felt very sad that it was happening over Christmas, but at the same time reminded that this was something that happened so frequently in that part of the world, and not just over Christmas, but many times throughout the year. And I had just signed with my agent a couple of months before then, and I was also inspired at the same time to write a cumulative style story. So as I was lying in bed, it occurred to me that I wanted to write about this and share this part of the world with North American readers. And I thought, okay, I want it to be about journey, not just to return the roof. This story is about a roof that flies off during a storm. And if you know any Filipino person living overseas, every time there's a typhoon, the first thing they'll say is, oh, so-and-so's roof flew off. So I knew instantly I wanted to write about a typhoon and a roof flying off and a child going on a journey to return the roof, which was a very common story in that part of the world. And I was inspired by the cumulative style of writing, and hence that's how the story came about. So I wrote the story pretty quickly. I shared it with my agent, and she sold that story that same year. And 2 years later, this book just came out last month, and that was a 2-year journey, and this is my debut picture book.
Well,
Yeah.
I like to go after just because I feel like our books are siblings. Because my book is called Our Nipa Hut, A Story in the Philippines, which is about Bahay Kubo. But mine was inspired with my family came from the rural part of Philippines in Zambales. So they have these houses there. And many of us grew up with the song Bahay Kubo. We all know it. I'm telling you, we're not going to sing karaoke here. But that song was, my grandma used to sing it to us, and then I found out my grandfather built her 3 nipa huts in the Philippines. I didn't get to see it when I went to go there in the Philippines, but so this is sort of like a love story for them. But my book was was acquired, so that's part of publishing, is that the editors wanted to buy it. In 2020, end of 2020, and actually started writing this at 2018. It was originally supposed to be a nonfiction because I wanted to talk about the structures of nipa huts. I wanted it to be out there as a picture book for kids to know these kinds of houses in the Philippines. And but it wasn't going anywhere with the publishing world. Workshopped it at and believe it or not, with the help of social media, Twitter. That's how I was able to get it fixed up, and it got found by an editor through these pitch wars. That's how it was found, and then it was supposed to come out in 2022, but because of COVID, it delayed it, and then it just came out in February 2024. So it was a long journey with this. It was originally supposed to be a nonfiction, then it became about a story about a family who go through the typhoon together, and loving the house that loves it back by protecting it from the storm. So it's a beautiful story too, and like I said, it's a great sister sibling book to a roof. No, two different stories, but beautiful books.
A quick follow-up question for folks that don't know. Can you tell us about Pitch Wars?
Oh, so it did. So I say pitch wars. It was actually through DV Pitch. There's so many types of pitching on Twitter where it's like an event where you kind of give like a tweet size of summary of your book, and it's like, hey, there's this book that we wrote, and it's about this, and if they like it or DM you and like, hey, you know what, that might be something we might like to be interested in. Can you send us the whole book, the whole manuscript? And then it's just it's different from Queering Out There, which is another step of publishing that is long and complicated, but that whole pitching thing, as much as it's also kind of complicated, it was really easy for me. Instead of going the long way and waiting, it's someone directly that says that they're part of the event and they're looking for that book, they like it, you talk directly to them. You don't need an agent to be able to talk to them.
And Pitch Wars, for everybody, is that something that was on Twitter pretty much all
Yes.
along? So I don't know now if it's
So-
or if it's shifting to another medium, but
I think it does. From talking to other people, I do remember they said they stopped doing it because it got really complicated, and it's a lot of volunteer work. I used to also be part of a group, another type of pitching event, but it was mentorship, and that got just too much. I think I know that they stopped doing it, and I kind of stopped doing it because it's all volunteer work. But it was a great way for us to be able to be connected with editors, agents, and they find new voices, new clients on there. At the time when it was good, it was really good because that's how I was found. I know a lot of other people were found that way too, through Twitter. But I don't know if it's still on like that. I know some places moved to mediums like Discord or Blue Sky. They moved to Blue Sky. So, and I know Instagram sometimes they'll find you there too. Just get the right hashtag, find the right hashtag. I know it's about that hashtag.
have a presence.
And that's the best way to kind of be out there.
Mayor Justine?
Thank you, Linda.
Sure. So Isabel in Bloom, this came out April. And the question was, how did we come up with these?
What did you think of that?
Yeah, so Isabel in Bloom is about a 12-year-old girl named Isabel. It takes place in what my teenagers call the 1900s. It takes place in 1999 San Francisco. And yeah, that's what they say now, the 1900s. I know, disrespect, don't you ever know? And so it's about a 12-year-old girl whose mom is an overseas Filipino worker. So Isabel has only seen her mom 5 times in 5 years. And I'm sure most of us are very familiar with this immigration story of Filipinos leaving their home country, leaving their families, leaving their children behind to give them a better life. And so the story takes place when Isabel has to fly 3,000 miles on her own from Manila to San Francisco to be reunited with her mom. And she's 12, she doesn't want to be there, she doesn't want to leave her friends. But eventually she finds a garden, and this garden is the bridge between her 2 homes. And so it's a novel in verse, it's told in poetry, and it was during 2020 when my editor said, hey, it's time, we need to figure out your next book. And this was sort of at the height of 2020. We were all hunkered in, didn't know what was going on, just all the chaos of the world. And it was around the time when there were many unprovoked attacks on Asian American elders that was happening, just weighing so heavy on all of us, but so heavy on myself. And I couldn't figure out how to be creative or how to write or how to do my job during that time. And then I decided to take that piece of Asian American elders, and that sort of was one of the nuggets that started this story. There's an intergenerational focus on this book. And so when I had that little piece of, well, I want something that shows respect to the generations that came before us, from there I began building what the story was. And for me, my process is, I think we're always subconsciously as writers absorbing stories and ideas and nuggets and things that we want to mull over and explore. And so I just had a lot of things in my head. Another thing was during that time in 2020, my mom was so worried about some of our family members in the Philippines. They weren't getting the vaccines as quickly and all these things. And it sort of took me back to when I was a kid. And my mom, like so many of us, we had our ritual of the Balikbayan box. She'd put this giant box in the bed. We'd put in, lipsticks, Sanka, Colgate, whatever. And so I had that image. I had this piece about these Asian American elders. And I thought, well, I kind of want to do something around this, but what is it? So I spent a lot of time brainstorming and then came up with this story, basically. Sort of just a mush of things that you stir in a pot and then poof, okay, there's my idea. And so I wrote the whole thing in prose. It took me many months, and the original story was in prose. It had 12 poems, and when my editor came back with like an 8-page editorial letter, which is basically just 8 pages of her single space comments, like, I don't know about this, what doesn't make sense? But one of her comments was, these poems have so much emotional resonance. They're very powerful. Can you do more of that? So come edit time, I said, sure, I can do that. And so I edited those poems. I ended up adding more. And as I edited, I just kept on adding more and more and more until I said, well, maybe it should be a book in verse, in poetry. And we had a deadline. So this book was actually supposed to come out over a couple years ago. And I asked my editor, I said, hey, I think this should be a novel in verse. What do you think? Let's redo the whole thing. And she's like, oh my gosh. But she, with her blessing, we did. And so then I took many more months to rewrite the entire thing, but in verse. And then it came out a few months ago. So the whole process was, I don't even know how many months. It was a long, long time. But I was grateful for the chance to be able to, find the heart of it and realize that it was best told through poetry. And I think that's because poetry just hits to the emotional heart right away. You can just get right to the emotion in just a few words. And so that really served the purpose of this kind of story that has so much emotion and is so tender.
I love that the story kind of told you the form it wanted to be in, which I think is something that happens with writers or illustrators, that the craft will reveal itself as you work on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I just had a quick question for you, Meek. Did you, it sounds like it was just, a craft and what the book wanted to be an artistic decision. Did you do any research in terms of like the market of it? Like other people making middle grade in verse? And because I am hearing a little more about that, so I'm curious, like, as this is a thing that might be becoming more accepted, and I love poetry, so
Yeah.
or maybe reading it.
Does anyone here write poetry or wish to write poetry or love poetry? Yeah, I see a few hands. So verse novels, especially for kids, are such a huge genre. They're written in such a way where a kid can read a whole thick book but in a short amount of time, because some of these poems just are a few lines and they feel really successful at it. So it's a wonderful tool for teachers, I think. But middle grade has a whole very rich canon of verse novels, and many of them are immigration stories, and I can see why, because there's so much interiority to those kinds of stories that lend themselves well to poetry. But I read like a ton of verse novels before attempting to write the rest of the poems, just as like a little boot camp to understand how poetry in novels work. So, I highly recommend that if anyone is trying to figure out like what to write, if you want to write a picture book, read 1,000 picture books, and that will really show you, how story arcs work, how words work, even just understanding like the format of 32 pages, and just to read all of that in an intense amount of time is really helpful.
Thank you. That's great.
I'm so glad. I feel like I should be there listening to all with your nuggets of wisdom. So much to say, but I think I will start with answering your question, which is reframing here. What's your inspiration? I've come to believe that the stories that I write are not really my stories, and that they're actually the world's stories that are being told through me. And it is because I am paying attention to the world, I'm being receptive to its communications, and therefore it's able to come out as a story that I wrote, but in reality it's not really my story. And so when I think of the art or the craft that I put into it, I think of it only as just a small part of it. I'm not downplaying the work that we do as writers and illustrators, right? We put a lot of effort into crafting our stories, but the inspiration really for me is a very big, important part of the process and being receptive to it. For example, I was going to talk about Mungan and Lola, which is our latest book, but I want to talk about Jack and Agyo, which I don't have with me, primarily because Lynnor here is the illustrator of that book. I found my inspiration for that book for that story because, well, let me backtrack. It's a story about a little boy who loves to read and then figures out one day that he might not be able to become Harry Potter because he doesn't have the color of the skin of Harry Potter. And it really bothered him, and he went out to fix this problem by coloring the library books brown to reflect his reality. And of course he gets in trouble. And then it goes into how his mother tells him stories about the epics and the folk tales, and then he learns about the warriors, and then he becomes encouraged to write and draw his own stories. That story basically came to me through my kid, who I was paying attention to, who one day told me that he couldn't be Harry Potter because his skin is gray. And that really broke my heart. And the process of writing that story was very quick because it presented itself to me practically as a whole story. The process illustrating with Lynnor took about, I think, a little over a year.
Yeah.
And I've never met Lynnor. This book came out in 2019. I've not met Lynnor until this weekend. It's all been virtual.
Come full circle.
Yes. I said we've been married for 2 years while we're in this book. We went our separate ways, and now we're seeing each other again. So, but the process.
Your child.
Yes. And so that Lynnor joked this morning to say that we do everything. So we are a nonprofit press. And so that's why I feel as if I should be there, because the experiences of these ladies are different from mine because they're working with traditional publishers, whereas we're a nonprofit and we publish we publish our stories differently than you do. And so Lynnor joked and said, "You guys do everything," but Lynnor, that's not true, because our books are very much community supported, from funding to creation to marketing to this. It's all very much supported by the community who hungers for these kinds of books. So, joke's on you, Lynnor. I'm kidding.
Yes. I think one of the things that I really got out of our collaboration was that you taught me kapwa. You had it on the cover. It was in the amulet of Agyo. And before kapwa was a trend on tattoos of people, that you brought it to my attention that book is really all about community. There's a page there that Agyo and Jack were all on the boat with the tikbalangs and the manananggal, the grandma, the lolos and the lolas, all people in the family. And that one scene had everybody in the community. And I think that was the message of the book too, was that we're all in this together. That right?
Yes.
Yes.
And if we have each other's backs, that's our anting-anting against
That
all
is our
of that
amulet.
stuff that's happening
Correct.
to us. So, but I want to. I don't want to take too much time, but I want to say
Question too. Go.
that the Jack and Agyo, because we're talking about it, and just in case there's someone from Bukidnon here, it is based on the Ulaging, which is the epic, and Agyo is the warrior in the Bukidnon epic, and he's the person who leads basically the tribe to their freedom, away from the, I don't know, away from the bad guys, let's just say. And he leads everyone to their freedom. And so Agyo is the inspiration of the Jack and Agyo book.
Yeah.
I love what you said, Justine, about like being the funnel for these stories and just simply paying attention, which I think is like true for writers. I think that's everyone from talking to you all. I know each of you is drawing from very personal experience in making your stories, but just to focus in on Mungan. Mungan is, can you tell us just a little bit about, because I didn't know until I wrote that, Mungan is a baybaylan, no? Like an original
Yes.
baybaylan?
Yes,
So
so
you're pulling from the Bukidnon tradition in your stories and
Yes.
how this generation can learn. So who's Mungan? And
So I was just talking about the Ulaging, the epic, the Bukidnon epic. In the story, the Agyo is the warrior, but he has a sister-in-law, and that sister-in-law is Mungan, and Mungan is the babaylan, the healer. And the story goes that when they were fleeing away from their I don't know what to call them, from the bad guys, she was sick, and so she had to be left behind. She had leprosy, and she had to be left behind, and the gods had mercy on her and gave her a betel nut, a mama, to cure her. And in the process of curing herself, she then became a healer herself. And so she taught the people to share, taught the people rituals of care and all that. And that is the inspiration of the story, which is about a little apo, a little granddaughter who is trying to help her Lola feel better. And it was through rituals of care that she does it, like hilot and making sabaw and all that stuff. So it's all about healing and collective healing and individual healing from our grief.
yeah. I think your book actually hits a theme that's in almost everyone's book, which is like healing from family separation. So Mungan's Lola is sad because she's left her homeland and she's processing that. And like Lynnor's book, just to jump over to Lynnor, the Sari Sari Summers, it's joyful, but it is this time for, there's a separation in the book, right, of the Lolas in the Philippines, and this little girl comes to visit her and helps her out with her store. And I wanted to ask a little about that, and then also like what it's like. That was you can speak to illustrating your own book that you wrote, which is very special. Yeah.
So I'm the author illustrator of Sari Sari Summers, and in one of the spreads, so one of the things that I want to mention also is Lola. They do the manapo as a greeting, so I wanted to make sure that in the cover also that we show that sign of respect for the elderly, so that we don't forget how to say hello to our elders. So the Nora is old enough to help out at the Sari Sari store, and she's visiting her grandma. And this is set in the Philippines because I wanted to show the readers what the Philippines looks like. There's a street scene there that's really busy, and it has Filipino words that I did not have subtitles or italicized, and I first thought that, hey, am I gonna alienate my readers? I asked the editor, and she said, no, go for it. I think it's about time for them to really see, and they could understand. They could figure it out. Your readers are smart. They could get from the pictures what you're trying to say. You don't have to put any subtitles on your Tagalog words and explain anything. And so that was very reassuring to me. So this Sari Sari Stores is set in the Philippines, but the other book that I illustrated, it was written by Dorina Lazo Gilmore Young, and that is set in America. And it's a Filipino, maybe mixed family, some from Hawaii. And so having to draw something that's set in the Philippines and also having something to draw set here, but also tying it together with our Filipino culture, with food, dance, and words that we speak. I think that is kind of tying to our theme here of finding home and belonging, because you could be anywhere as long as your heart is with your family, your community, your culture, and that whatever makes that real for you, whether it be food or the books that we read. And I think that's kind of what's important. Yeah.
How is it different, like illustrating your own as opposed to what's the process like when you're receiving the manuscript and working with the editor?
Yeah. Okay.
Or was it much different, or I imagine it is, but yeah.
I think it's very different because as an illustrator, I have the picture book dummy already kind of planned out first, and I know where the pictures are gonna be. I wrote it, I illustrated, I know what it's going to look like. Maybe the art director will move things around and help me with the pagination and to make sure that everything flows. But with Kailani's Gift, which is written by Dorina, I get the full manuscript first. I get the full manuscript, and then I also get the pagination already. So it's already set with the layout and everything. And that helps me a lot to visualize the placement. That also helps my brain to make it's easier for me if they paginate it. There's a lot of brain work happening when I'm doing the figuring out of where the things are going to be placed. I think it's a little bit more freeing if it's somebody else's word also. For some reason, because I'm an illustrator first, so if it's somebody else's word that I'm illustrating, I feel a little bit more responsibility because it's not my text. But also it's different in a way. But in my own word, in my own book, I already know what it's gonna look like, and I know what it's gonna be. But with other text, somehow that text decides for me what style I'm gonna draw it in. For example, the one that just was recently announced, it's with Min Lei. Yes, it's with Min Lei, who is the author of Built to Last, whose work, the illustration is by Dan Santat, who was a Caldecott winner. So no pressure, right? So the next book is with Min Lei, and there is no narrative text. All the text is in, it's all in speech bubbles. So to me, that's coming out like graphic novel, or I'm going to do this picture book more like a graphic novel with panels and speech bubbles. So sometimes the text dictates what kind of illustration style I'm going to do. This is interesting.
I have a question for Stephanie. When we were chatting about your book, you said something that I was like, wow, I wrote it down because it was like so awesome. But I also think if anyone else wanted to react to this, but you said Filipinos survive not because of the government, but because of each other, by any country. That I wanted to know if you just anything you wanted to share about that that's very broad, and if anyone else wanted to share that, because I think that's actually a running theme in all your books and process, actually. Yeah.
So, I was born in the Philippines, but I grew up in Hong Kong. So I am from the country that supplies OFWs, and I'm also from the country that receives a lot of the OFWs. So I am intimately aware of the challenges that they face, just having to live in a foreign country, and also the discrimination that they face as migrant workers living in these foreign countries and having temporary visas. So, separate discussion on my feelings about the government, but I do know that, wherever you do go, Filipinos are very tightly knit community. So they stick together. There is this community spirit called Bayanihan, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which was really the driving motivator for this book. So yes, it's about a typhoon, it's about a journey, but really I wanted to showcase that resilience that Filipinos have because of that team spirit, community mentality. And therefore, no matter, what natural disaster they may face or what type of discrimination they may face, they just power through. They find ways to seek comfort and provide assistance to each other, even if the bigger powers don't provide that assistance to them. So, in the story, and I had made a conscious decision that when I write a children's story set in the Philippines or about a Filipino, with a Filipino protagonist, I wanted it to represent the typical family that looks like a child being raised by a single parent or a grandmother or a family member with one or two parents working overseas. So that was something I knew early on I would want to do in all of my Filipino stories. So in my story, A Roof, it features a girl with a father. I don't mention that the mother is working overseas, but I just wanted to be sort of like this incidental representation of a typical family unit that you would find in the Philippines. And the story is as they go on this journey to return the roof, each time they reach an obstacle because of the typhoon, a neighbor comes and helps them, and each time that group grows bigger and bigger to return the roof until they reach the family that's lost the roof, and now an entire community is there to rebuild not just the roof but the home. And that to me is, Bayanihan in a nutshell, but also representative again of that Filipino culture that gives them that resilience to survive against all of these challenges. But yeah, I think, just experiencing this festival, this is my first time to be a part of this. This community has grown because of Filipinos supporting each other, and you really feel that sort of familial ties and not just care for each other and, wanting to support each other in this literary world and the arts and just uplifting each other. And there is a large community of Filipinos in the U.S., but we are minorities, and we find ways to grow and uplift each other by sticking together, promoting each other, and just supporting each other. So that is basically the reason why I wrote this book, and I think all these stories sort of share that same Bayanihan theme, where you'll see whether it's intergenerational, within a family, within a village, within a larger community. It is a very common Filipino trait to just naturally want to give more than receive sometimes, and to help each other.
That's beautiful.
So I just want to add more of a process issue as opposed to stories, which is, it's great. I love the Bayanihan stories, and I think we need more of those. But what I want to bring into the conversation is the process, the Bayanihan process, because I've been asked many times by people why I insist on doing the nonprofit way of publishing, which is hard work. And I'm asked, is it about the books that we do? Yes, it is. But it's not really just the books. Is it about making money, making some kind of income from it? And yes, it is. I would love to make some income from it, but it is not primarily it. For me, what it is doing it this way is an alternative way of doing, different from the profit-driven industry, the publishing industry, right? It's about the books and it's about the sales. And that's why it has all the problems that it does. I'm not going to go into it. And for me to do it this way, which is very much community supported and funded and all that, provides me a different way of doing things.
that to show that this is something we also can do without having to rely on that kind of model. And when I say that, I'm not, saying that model is bad, but I'm just saying that this is an alternative way that we could be doing it. And guess what? Our community is here. I have crowdfunded 3 books, and each time I'm afraid that I will never reach my goal, and it's always surpassed. And so we are growing, and now I'm getting more and more writers that are reaching out, querying if I'm interested in doing these books. I would never have thought of doing this before because I was afraid to do the hard work. But seeing the support that I have seen in the last projects that we've done, I feel very encouraged. And I know that the work is still there, but I'm willing to do it because I know that the community is there and they want to do the work too. So publishing with the community, I think, is a very good alternative to the traditional way of publishing. Biennial in the process.
practice.
Yes. In practice, yes.
Yes, I heartily expect.
Yes.
Rachel, you're gonna say anything?
Well, I was gonna say, with your question, which I completely forgot. I know it has something to do about the government. It's like, down with the government.
Filipinos survive not because of the government, but because of each other. And
Yes.
well, that's like embodied
Well,
in your
it's
book, which it is.
It is, yeah. Actually, what this book is really about, it's about a family that takes care of their home. They are responsible for their home. They built it themselves. So they go out and prepare and fix it themselves with the things that are surrounded by them. That is something they still do in the Philippines, and especially in rural parts of the Philippines where it's not in the city, where there is no help. They are there to find their own, the palm leaves and the bamboo. They go look for it, anything. I know, and it's a mention in the book too, in pages, that they use different kinds of resources now, but it's all stuff that they can find nearby because they don't have the funds for it. They're in areas where they can't get those kinds of like concrete stuff, But of course there are, I know with your book, it's with an aluminum roof.
The corrugated sheet metal.
A sheet, and that is other ways that parts of Philippines where they are able to find those materials. And for them, because they have no help, they have to go look for it. They need that back. They can't just go buy a new one. And then in my book, they got to go find it and build it themselves. And that is how it's like sustainable. It's like just the only way that they can survive over there is by taking care of it themselves. And that is what my book is about, with I feel like that's how it is with the Filipino community themselves too. Got to be the ones to take care of it ourselves. Can't really rely on outside sources. We got to take care of ourselves. That's the spirit of that.
Can I just say that my favorite line from your book, and these books are all so beautiful, is something like, I'll take care of you and you'll take care of me.
Yes.
That just so much embodies, I think, the spirit of so many Filipino books that I read, and the theme. And I loved that. Was such a beautiful line.
Thank you. And also there's story time too, after this, that the kids will be able to, yeah, sorry. It is one of my favorite lines too, because that is seriously the theme of it, is that they'll take care of you and it'll take care of you. You take care of it and it'll take care of you. And the house itself is family.
It's giving Filipino.
Oh yes, it really is. It is.
Well, we're getting so close to, I want to hold 10 minutes for audience Q&A, but I have 2 really just rapid fire questions for you. So one, everyone feel free. It's so precious to see the kids' reactions to Filipino books, especially from Filipino kids, and to realize you're the author. And does anyone have a story they'd like to share, a reaction that just, you remember?
I saw on YouTube, a little kid is doing a read aloud, and he's like, "Magandang umaga." Like he's speaking it like that. I was like, he is so cute. I was like, I want to share it on my video. It's like a small YouTube. He's just reading out loud, and he's like expressing he's like screaming out like the Tagalog words. He's like, "Ooh, magandang umaga." So, it's the cutest thing. And I'm like, oh my god, I reached 1. That's all I'm having. That's my YouTube. If you YouTube, Arnie Paha read aloud, there's a little kid. Oh, he's so cute.
My favorite. Oh, sorry, go. Go ahead. Well, I love all the kids, like during when I do school visits, who come up and say, I'm Filipino, and I give them a high five. But my favorite was actually on Twitter. I don't know if we're still calling it Twitter or X or whatever, but a teacher had tweeted me and said, I've never seen myself in a book until now. And it was for my first book, The House That Lou Built. And then she said, she ended it, and I'm 41 years old. And, that it made me cry, because think about the first time you've ever recognized yourself in a book. And that's such a powerful moment. And for so many writers of color and for myself, I never saw myself or my family or my culture reflected in any books that I read, not even the most minor characters. And so to go 41 years without reading a book about Filipinos is like, wow, that's a long, long time. So I'm so happy for these books and all the books here at the festival that, we have these windows and we have these mirrors too.
So the one I'm going to share is about yesterday. Somebody came to me and asked me to sign Sari Sari Summers. They did a video of reading the book. At the end, almost at the end of the life of the grandma, they celebrated her life, reading the book. Each family member read a line. Nephew, nieces, they gathered together and they showed it there. That made me cry because it was a tribute to her grandmother, and she was just so happy to see that this book is here. They displayed it with their celebration. They were so happy that it was close. They knew that their grandmother's life was gonna end, so it was the last piece, and the grandmother also got to read lines from the book. So her voice with the book is just, I said, that's it, I'm going home, I did my job.
Then my drugs from
I just want to add, the books are also for the child in that 41-year-old person, right? So sometimes we think this is just for the kids and we want the kids to come and listen and all that. But the adults there are also still kids at heart that are wanting these books as well.
So my book is very new. It just came out a couple weeks ago, so I haven't actually shared it with students or kids yet. But I did give a talk a couple weeks ago at the university in British Columbia, so it's our local university, and it was to a creative writing class of 100 adult students. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm prepared to speak to little kids, but not to big kids. And I'm looking at the sea of faces, and they're just stoic, so didn't know how I was doing.
The kids will let you know how you're doing.
Yes, right? But these were just looking at me with blank faces. And, I thought, okay, presentation was done. And then I had a couple students come down, so they asked questions. And a couple students came down to speak to me, and they were in tears. And it never occurred to me that my story would move adults until I heard why they were so moved by it, and how, like you mentioned, they grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, not seeing themselves in the books that they read, and some of them were also had family members affected by that specific typhoon that I'd mentioned, and so it really resonated with them. And of course I cried. I was so touched by just how emotional that it made them. And I think it also inspired them to feel like they could also break into publishing. Because you don't see yourself in the books that you read, you don't think that you can be in the books that you read or write the books that you read. So I think for them, just hearing about my story made them hopeful. And this is not an easy industry to break into. It's very long, but it is doable. You can do it. As we've all been through it ourselves. So,
That's great.
I think I was going to just say also, selfishly, I wrote it for all the little kids in us, like you said, that we didn't see ourselves in our books. And so we could be main characters in our books, right? We're not just the sidekick friend, like small cast of character. We could be the star of our own stories.
Yeah, I had a closing comment, which I was going to make a question. But just the writer Joyce Carol Oates had said that all writing is a form of homesickness. So I think, yeah, thank you for helping people find home, like for writing and healing that homesickness in your books. So we have time, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes for questions. You first, and then
So I'm not local to California. I actually flew in from for this.
Wow.
So my children, I have 3 children. They are the only, not only Filipino Americans in their school, but also only Asian Americans in their school.
Wow.
And so I have found that as their parents, I really need to find the media for them because it's not accessible. The other thing that's like really frustrating is that even if I request it in the libraries and schools, because they're one child in a school. So because they're one child in the school, it's not a priority. But they're the one for me, right? And so I want to make sure when they walk into a library, they can see themselves because I didn't have that. And so my question is, how do I advocate for your books and your literature for my children in a community that's predominantly white and doesn't prioritize that makes sense? Yeah. Yes. So if there's those like how to approach them in like conversations and things like that would be.
Can I ask which did you try to talk to? Because I'm a school librarian, so that kind of gives me power of what I get to put in the books in my school. And yes, I ordered my books for my school. and everybody else's, just to let you know. Okay, they give us funding, they give us money, I will use their money, all to it. If you can't get help, public libraries should, even if it's for that one kid. Because that's something we do too in the like writing community. Hey, want to order my book from at your library? And I will be checking those libraries. You can do online. Look it online. You're that library, public library. I know for a fact I'm in Utah. I think I looked it up because I know some people that are in Utah. I think Park City. If you're in Park City area, I know. Very far. Oh, okay, you're far from there. Okay, I do know. Request it at your public library for sure. They should not deny you.
I've requested multiple books from my public library, and they're like, oh, I don't know if we'll be able to get it in this month. Oh, I don't know if I'll be able to get it in this month. And I've gone through multiple people. I've asked like the children's librarians. I've asked like the YA. I even got to like the front desk. I called like the office and for my child's school. I've talked to the principal. They go to a charter school. So they don't have like a big house library. Sorry, it's like lots of kids.
They should have a form. Fill out the form. And yes, it can take months. It can take, I can put in an order in October and then it'll take till February, maybe even close to May. So yes, the process is slow, but just by saying, hey, I want to request this book, fill out the application, they have to request it and see like, hey, there's a need for this. And I know some of us that are traditionally, we have an ISBN. It's in the system. It can be found. Again, keep going for it. That actually, you doing it for us, that is the exact help we want for us. That's how you can support our books for free, just by requesting it, by filling out that form and saying, this is what we have. You can go on to all our online, our websites, our Instagrams. I have the ISBN on there, so you don't need to go research it. We have the ISBN. That is the minimum for free. You could support our what you're doing is great. And I'm sorry that the frustration you're going through to get it to you soon enough. Sometimes that can happen because it does take a process. But at the same time, they have to provide that for you because that's the service that they are required to do. And if you can't get it done from your public library, ask the school library too and say, hey, you know what? Have you thought about this book? Even just by putting that in their mind to go request our books, because again, it's in the system. They have to be able to look for it. They have to think about it. That already helps what you're inquiring. And again, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that.
And I would add, if you can rally other parents, because Filipino stories, I will always try to say this because our books are
for Filipino kids, and they're for everybody else too.
Yeah.
Like, they want their kids to be culturally competent. We live in a global world, so I know that other parents can get behind that. And also, I'm sorry you're experiencing that, and thank you for the advocacy.
Yeah, I hope you find allies. And surprisingly, in the book fest that I've been to, they're not all just Filipinos getting this book. They are, our allies and the teachers and the librarians that are supporting Filipino kids, and because they know somebody. So hopefully you find the support that you need, even if they're not Filipino. Right.
So we're almost at time. So when
I just wanted to say I'm so very proud of all you ladies. My kids are all, our kids are both grown up now, grown-ups. But when we were growing up, I think as a first generation immigrant, I was so concentrated on getting them acclimated. I would just speak, English. So I didn't get a chance to really show them the language that I grew up in.
Back up.
I haven't had a chance to read your books. Every time I wanted a Filipino book, I would write to my relatives in the Philippines and say, send me some books so I could read it to my children. So are your books are they in English or are they in mixed dialects? Or is there
everyone's books are in English. I know mine and Justine's are also multilingual, and
I think
everyone else
our
is.
Lynnor, mine has some Tagalog words.
Same, mine has some Tagalog words and phrases.
I'm
Yeah, mine
looking
as
more
well.
towards the next generation, so I could read them in 2 languages and they'll fill up weeks.
Thank you. So we have a hard stop. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
I'll be doing story time at 2:30.
And we have a story time coming in right now. You want to stay?